So if you are alive in the world today, you have undoubtedly been hearing about the new coronavirus strain that has emerged out of the UK. If you read any slew of news articles and headlines, you will see the words new strain in big and bold. It came up in conversation last night for me at a family dinner, and then again later that night as my partner started reading me news headlines, and I could hear very loud alarm bells ringing in the words of these headlines and the little snippets that my partner was reading me. Now, I'm a forever optimist, so when I hear things like this, I become very skeptical of them. Anything that really sounds the alarm aggressively, I tend to think to myself, is it really that bad? What are we missing? What are we not being told? What's the angle of this story? What's the context? And I mean, the world is really responding to this in a really fearful way. Countless articles being written about this kicking off, this new widespread panic of coronavirus. I woke up to reading financial news. Futures connected to the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 were down almost 2% this morning, which is a massive margin that we haven't seen for some time. So the alarm bells really are ringing around the world as to what it means with this new strain coming out and emerging in the UK. So I thought to myself it would be a good idea to dive into a couple of articles, hear some quotes from some leading health experts, and really get to the bottom of what is this new strain and do we need to be afraid of it, and what is the level of concern that we need to have. So first things first, what do we know about new strains? Well, in fact, new strains aren't so new at all. There has been many new strains of coronavirus throughout the time that we've been spending in this worldwide pandemic, and a lot of them are not really newsworthy, so they don't make the headlines like this one does. There are reasons why this one is making headlines, which we will get to. Now here's a quote from the Guardian article that I'll quote a few times in this video, and it says, "Viruses mutate all of the time. Most of the new variants die out. Sometimes they spread without altering the virus's behavior. Very occasionally, they trigger dramatic changes." So this was the first piece that I read that really just said to me, hey, just because there's a new strain out there isn't necessarily cause to freak out and for all this widespread panic. So this is something really important to understand, that this thing does mutate and it changes all the time. It's really about how it mutates and what effect that mutation has on the disease, how it affects people and how it spreads that really matters. And it's that piece of this mutation that we want to understand to see if there is a cause for concern that we need to be really fearful about. Now, on that point of being fearful of this new strain is this quote that also comes from the Guardian article. "The appearance of the new variant is alarming, though it should be noted that there has been several previous mutations of COVID-19. Last month, the Danish government culled millions of mink," a story that we might have heard, "after it emerged that hundreds of COVID-19 cases were associated with SARS-CoV-2 variants carried by farmed mink. In October, analyses suggested a coronavirus variant that originated in Spanish farm workers spread rapidly through Europe and accounted for most of UK cases." That was news to me and something that I found very interesting to read. The article went on to quote Ewan Birney, who is the Deputy Director General of the European Molecular Biology Laboratory and the Joint Director of its European Bioinformatics Institute at Cambridge. He went on to say, "In neither case was it found that these variants increased transmission of the disease. However, it is now clear that this is not the case for variant VUI-202012/01, the correct code name for this new strain. If the new variant was going to have a big impact on disease severity, we would have seen that by now." That's obviously a very important piece. If it's going to show up, or if it is going to have this massive impact, someone who is in the know is saying that, well, we would have seen that by now. And that's, I think, really promising in terms of keeping our fears relatively quelled. Now, going back to something that I said before about, well, it's not necessarily that there is a new strain, it's what the effect of the new strain has that is important. Viruses mutate all the time. Sometimes, most of the time, it really doesn't matter that it mutates at all. But in the case that it does, and that has an impact on how it spreads or how people get sick, then it is something that we need to think about and that the public needs to be aware about. So further to that idea, in an interview for an article on healthline.com, Dr. Brian Labus, PhD and assistant professor at the School of Public Health at the University of Nevada, said, "In general, it means that the virus is different in either the way it spreads or the way it interacts with the immune system due to one or more mutations. If that strain spreads more easily or causes a more serious disease, it would be concerning, but mutations that can do that are rare. That is why we haven't been talking about thousands of different strains of the virus with varying severity and spread. Now, regarding the new strain, Labus said that the mutation is in the spike protein, which would allow the virus to spread more easily, which is the cause for concern and the piece that we want to focus on. If it spreads more easily, we are going to be concerned about it, Labus said. However, it is still being studied whether this is indeed the case. Now, that is really important. We're studying it, we're figuring it out. And unfortunately, with news headlines get people to click on things and they send people and they create traffic. Is there necessarily a cause for concern on something that hasn't been fully studied yet? In my opinion, no, but again, I'm a forever optimist. So I look at that thing and I say, it hasn't really been studied extensively yet. We really don't know what the outcome is. Well, I'm not gonna get my arms up and lose my shit over something that we really don't understand very much. Now, in very, very optimistic news about this new strain, Dr. Brian Labus and also Matt Hancock, who is the UK Minister for Health, both agreed that it is very highly unlikely that this new strain will not be affected by the vaccines that we have since developed. So what's the conclusion? Stay on top of it. Keep reading about it. Don't go buying a 5-year supply of toilet paper or your own personal ventilator. The jury is still very much out on this. This thing is rippling across the world right now and causing a lot of fear, and I think the world needs a little less fear right now and a little more fact. So keep your ear to the ground. We don't know whether this is going to be highly impactful or not impactful at all. It's in a very, very gray area right now. So most importantly, keep an open mind and don't commit to this being nothing at all or the beginning of the rapture. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching.